Welcome back into the locker room once again. I am your host, Will Kronsberg, joined this week once again by Braden Maloy. It is the second week of November. We've been talking about it for, it seems like, months as football season has slowly moved from September, October, November. A lot of people around Columbia have been saying November 9th. That is when the Gamecock women's basketball team kicks off their season, and we are finally into that second week of November. College basketball starts tomorrow. Braden, what are you most excited to see?
I'm excited to be back in the CLA, Colonial Life Arena. Last year, we weren't able to be in it because of COVID restrictions, rules, and all that. So we were relegated to watching it on TV. And this team is good, so it's amazing to watch on TV. But watching it in person, being in that environment, whether it's men or women's, we know our women's are a little better, but both teams, there's just it's something about the atmosphere in Colonial Life. I'm really excited to go to the games.
And USC starts at number 1 in the women's poll. They're a team that went to the Final Four last year. Over on the men's side, you have Gonzaga, who went undefeated all the way up into the championship game. They're the preseason number 1. That's not really much of a reward for their falling just short last year, but they do start as preseason number 1. Kansas, UCLA also ranked up there, along with Villanova and a few of those blue blood teams that we talk about. Who are you most excited to see on the men's team and why?
Yeah, so we talk about Gonzaga's one loss in the championship. You know, I always say I'd rather take a regular season loss if I was going to lose and then win it all, but Gonzaga just falling short. I think they're going to be another strong team. Again, they're one of those programs, we talked about it a lot last year, that they don't have a lot of one and done. So they're a very strong veteran program, juniors and seniors, and that you can see that's beginning to help them produce wins and get to these high-profile games because they've been such a collective team. I think teams like UCLA, even Duke and Kentucky, I think they get back to being where they were 5-6 years ago, being at the top of their game. Duke, Coach K, he's on his farewell tour, so Duke might have one of those special seasons trying to help him go out on top. UNC, they just replaced another legend in Roy Williams with an assistant. We'll see how they do. I think they always have a strong recruiting class. John Calipari, Kentucky is always going to be good. Even Bama in the SEC, they got I think the Sweet 16 last year. I think they'll be good again. Tennessee. I think there's a lot of quality teams in men's college basketball. A couple from the SEC. There might be a few surprises, but really a couple from the SEC, but a lot on the West Coast and just kind of around the country.
Now, Gonzaga is a team sort of the men's version of what we see with the Gamecocks here in terms of they start as the preseason number 1. They return a star player in Drew Timme from return year. Of course, the Gamecocks return their whole team. Gonzaga loses 2/3 of their big 3, but they still have Drew Timme, and they bring in the number 1 recruit in Chet Holmgren. Is this going to be a team, or do we have any teams that can run the table, dominate the whole season, or will it be more of a group of 5 or 6 teams that look strong heading into the tournament?
I think last year we saw Gonzaga kind of be that, they're the preseason number 1. Well, I don't know if they were preseason number 1, but they're the number 1 starting week 2, yeah. And then throughout the entire year they were number 1. You're like, yeah, that's the number 1 team. I think this year we kind of like more parity. I think we have kind of like you saying maybe 5 or 6 teams because these teams now like the UCLAs and the UNCs and Kentuckys are another year in the system. Those freshmen that did not leave this past year to the one and dones, they're now another year in the system. The coaches have now had another year, and we forget they have a full off season. COVID, it's still here, but they're loosening restrictions. They have more availability with the players, more availability for practice time. And with college students, college athletes, that is such a huge advantage to be able to spend as much time as you can. So I think you start seeing more and more teams on the men's side that are strong and can win any game on any day. And I think it's going to make for an exciting March Madness because you're going to get down to the Elite 8 and all 8 could win that.
And I think we will see more of that parity, sort of an up and down, a few different number 1s throughout the year. I think we'll see some of those blue bloods like Kentucky and Duke, maybe even a UNC who have all struggled over the past 2-3 years. I think we'll see them start to rise back to the top as normal recruiting takes shape again. But we've alluded to it a few times. Sort of the story around the University of South Carolina and Columbia, it's our women's team. They came so close last year, just a tipping away from the finals. They come back, they return the whole roster and the number 1 class, the number 2 player in America in Raven Johnson. It's such a strong team. What do you expect to see after that 57-point exhibition win last week?
The culture that she has brought here, that is that winning culture, that we are the better team. and we're going to show you, night in, night out, you're not going to do anything against us. This is who we are. You can try to play up to our level. It's not going to work.
But the thing is, and Braden, you have to keep this in mind, for as good as you are, you can go 38-0 and lose in the Final Four. We saw it with Gonzaga last year. We saw it with Kentucky a few years ago, both on the men's side. You can be a dominant women's team and still not get to the top. And the Gamecocks they'll face UConn later in the year. They start the season at NC State tomorrow. That's number 5. Stanford comes back as the defending champions. They have Haley Jones on the team as well. A lot of strong players. I mean, with UConn, I didn't even mention Paige Beckers, the preseason Player of the Year favorite. So there are a lot of strong players on the women's side. Do you expect USC to actually pull away, or will it be UConn and Stanford and USC? Everybody in there.
I think they'll be up there, the UConns and the Stanfords and the NC States. But I really do think this is, we like to call it, I think this will be like a Bama football year. How like usually in football, Bama's the best and you have like 2, 3, and 4 are good, but Bama's just out there. I think this is, you have 2, 3, and 4, UConn, Stanford, NC State, they're good. They just cannot match the level of a USC team like this. I just don't think it will happen. I think USC will pull away.
So the question is, and I'll just pose this one question to you. If they're the number 1 team, and they came so close last year, and they won a championship a few years before that, is it championship or bust for Dawn Staley and the University of South Carolina Gamecocks?
Let me tell you right here, right now. This is a championship or bust season. Period. The talent you have, the experience that you have, the level of coaching that you have, if you don't produce a title, if you don't hang a banner, if you don't cut nets down at the end of this year, it's a lost season.
Now, on the other side, vastly different expectations for their shared tenets at Colonial Life Arena. The men's basketball team, led by Frank Martin, brought back 2 of his assistants, brought in 1 new assistant and former player, Brian Steele, and didn't bring back a lot of the team. I think there are 6 or 7 returning players, including only 2 or 3 that played significant minutes. Of those 2 or 3, star forward Keyshawn Bryant is suspended the first 5 games of the year, so it's going to be a very new Gamecock men's team. What are rational expectations for them, and is it a hot seat year for Frank Martin?
Rational, I'd say high end, I think the team can finish 6-7 in the SEC. Low end, there's a chance they could finish 12-13. It's going to be a struggle for this team this year. They played a preseason game this past week against Benedict. Both of us were able to go and watch that game, and they looked good at times, and they ended up pulling away and winning by 20 or 30 plus, which is what you're supposed to do against a team like Benedict. But there are sometimes it looks sloppy. The offense, there was like 2 or 3 guys scoring. There wasn't a lot of full team offense. The transition defense for the Gamecocks didn't look the best. So I think this first week, and you have to take it with a grain of salt because Keyshawn Bryant is out. So these first 5 games, you got to, what could they do with Bryant in? What could they do with him out? And you mentioned the team has 7 first-year transfers. 7 players already that have not played a single regular season minute for the Gamecocks. So I think this first month is really going to tell what this Gamecock team is made of, if they are going to be able to compete for a bubble spot in the tournament or if they're playing more for the NIT.
And I think that'll be a good month for them to figure out what they have. They're playing in the non-conference for the first 2 months, and it's not the same kind of non-conference schedule that Dawn Staley is scheduled for the women's team. They don't play number 5 right off the bat. It'll be a little bit of an easier way into it with USC Upstate. I think they have a good chance of figuring out what they have, and if they have something of value, if they have a team that can put it together down the stretch, then we could see the Gamecock men's basketball team start to experience resurgence in the next few years. Give it some time, but allow Frank Martin to stay there.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's tough with the hot seat for Frank Martin. Yes, he's not winning. He also just doesn't have the talent there. I mean, the recruiting classes and again, you can put that on Martin and his staff because they are the ones recruiting. So I think depending on how this season goes, if they finish at that six range in the SEC out of 14 teams, I think he's fine. If they finish down in the 12, 13 range with like the Vanderbilts and Georgia and all those kind of teams down in basketball, I think the seat could be starting to get a little warm, if not hot, for Martin, just because this is now what would be three. They have not really done anything since the 2017 Final Four run. I mean, 18, 19, 20. They were kind of dud years. So, I mean, fourth year in a row, you don't do a lot. I think the seat could get hot.
And it's definitely something to keep a look at as we start the college basketball season tomorrow. We'll go all the way into the first week of April. Excited to see what we have. And that'll do it for us on this week's edition of The Locker Room. For Braden Maloy, I'm Will Kronsberg. Thank you so much for watching.